During an ominous night, a cup of tea and a beautiful man lie on the floor. A woman coldly stares at the man. She orders the knights to get rid of the crown prince. For her beloved's sake, she has committed an injustice. The woman then walks away from the bloody room full of dead bodies. By committing such treason, the woman thinks that her beloved will be happy to be a king. She enters the throne room with anticipation. The red-haired man sitting on the throne asks her for updates. She mentions how she got rid of Crown Prince Alfonso. The man smiles, and his laughs echo in the throne room. He tells Ariadne that she did a great job. Ariadne sweetly smiles. Now that the cleanup is done, the man plans to make Ariadne the noblest woman in the kingdom. Ariadne feels happy that Cesare said that. She hugs him, thinking that this is for the best. She can be happy alongside her beloved Cesare. After the coup d'état, Cesare became the Etruscan Kingdom's regent, and 9 years quickly passed by. Ariadne also fulfilled her role as the head of the palace's internal affairs. However, despite her efforts to fulfill the duties of the previous queens, people still talk about her humble background and call her unqualified as a noble. The nobles wonder when Cesare will marry Ariadne. Rumors also say that Cesare can't marry an illegitimate child. Despite those rumors, Ariadne believes that Cesare loves her. Ariadne suddenly hears that Cesare is a concubine's child and that he is actually Alfonso's half-brother. A countess claims that a half-breed can't receive the blessings of the heavens. Ariadne snaps and attacks the countess who said it. She tells her to badmouth her instead of Cesare. Cesare wonders what is happening. Ariadne smiles at him, but Cesare runs over to the noble instead. The noblewoman then talks badly about Ariadne. Ariadne can't believe that Cesare didn't run to her rescue instead. Cesare grabs her and tells Ariadne to do the work properly. He claims that the countess is more useful than Ariadne. He tells her not to act shamelessly, or he won't make her his wife. However, more years pass by, and Ariadne is still a fiancée while Cesare has another woman. One night, Cesare forces himself on Ariadne. Ariadne thinks she will now be Cesare's wife. Just then, Cesare mentions that Isabella will be the queen, making Ariadne shocked. Ariadne pushes away Cesare and points out that Isabella, her sister, is Alfonso's wife and is an impure widow. Cesare claims Isabella has remained pure throughout her marriage. Ariadne insists that her sister is impure and had a miscarriage. Cesare glares at her and exclaims that women's enemies are also women. He calls Ariadne an inferior woman, and Ariadne can't believe what she just heard. Ariadne cries and mentions how Cesare promised her to be his wife. Cesare then mentions that Ariadne is inferior compared to the noble Isabella. Ariadne now realizes that Cesare has been in love with Isabella since the start. Cesare laughs while claiming that Isabella was meant for him from the beginning. He was mortified to be engaged to Ariadne. Ariadne falls as she realizes that she is just a replacement. Cesare chuckles and claims that she is not even worth being called as a replacement. Ariadne exclaims that she helped with the treason and even sacrificed her ring finger. She gave up everything for Cesare. Cesare turns his head and calls for someone to lock up Ariadne, who has turned crazy. Ariadne gets dragged away and locked up in the West Tower. Ariadne recalls how Cesare tells her how she resembles lily flowers, pure and obedient. Ariadne can't help but smile. She wakes up from it and realizes that today is the coronation ceremony. Cesare has been officially crowned king. Ariadne should have been beside him. Just then, someone comments how beautiful the valley's lilies are, but the roses in the garden are far more precious. Isabella asks how Ariadne's sleep went. Ariadne angrily asks what is between her and Cesare. Isabella tells her not to talk badly about her husband. Ariadne apologizes for what she did with Alfonso. However, Isabella was talking about Cesare as her husband. She claims that she is meant to be the most glorious woman in the kingdom. She calls Ariadne shameless for trying to be the queen. She claims she experienced a lot of bad things, especially the miscarriage rumors, and she wants Ariadne to take responsibility for them. Isabella wants to make Ariadne pay for everything. Ariadne angrily asks why her sister is doing this. Isabella claims it doesn't matter who, but she wants someone who will make her the most glorious woman in the kingdom. Ariadne despairs as she deeply loves Cesare. Unlike Isabella, she blames her sister for ruining her love life. Isabella laughs out loud and claims that Cesare knelt before her. Cesare told her how he thinks of Isabella while embracing Ariadne. He also commented on how Ariadne's figure resembles a man's and Isabella is way more petite and fragile. Isabella asks if there was ever a man who wanted Ariadne. Ariadne realizes now that she is just a replacement. Isabella teaches her sister not to hopelessly devote herself to a man because they don't know what gratitude is. She claims it is better to raise their value themselves to make men swoon over them. Ariadne falls to her knees, thinking that Cesare has left her. However, Isabella knows that Cesare will also get tired of her and remember Ariadne, who was faithful by his side. Knowing that, she plans to kill her own sister so there will be no problems in the future. Ariadne gets stabbed from behind and is killed by her own beloved sister. The bleeding Ariadne finds everything unfair. She wonders where everything went wrong. She wishes to turn back time. She remembers the golden commandment, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Ariadne wishes to have a life like that and wonders why she can't. A voice asks her if she can live by the golden commandment. Ariadne confirms that she can do it without a doubt. Ariadne opens her eyes and discovers the place where she used to live. She notices her small hands and checks the mirror. She returns to her younger self. She notices a mole she didn't have before. A woman appears and tells her to get ready for work. Ariadne swears to protect herself this time. She won't stand still anymore. The maid keeps shouting at Ariadne and calling her the daughter of a lowly servant. Ariadne grits her teeth as she hears what the maid says. Another maid comes and exclaims that someone came to take Ariadne back. Ariadne remembers that this was the day when her father called her back. Cardinal de Mere was indeed a cardinal but had a wife and children, unlike the others. The cardinal can't leave his wife and let an aristocrat, Lucrezia, be his mistress. Lucrezia behaved like the cardinal's official wife and had 3 children who received the same treatment as the first wife's children. The second daughter, Isabella, is hailed as the most beautiful woman in the city. However, the cardinal also had a child with a servant, and that is Ariadne. She was kicked out for being the child of a lowly servant and living on a farm. Ariadne later arrives at the cardinal's mansion. She meets her father, who is sitting menacingly in his office. They glare at each other, and the unfilial daughter expresses her joy at seeing her father. The cardinal stares at her and is glad that Ariadne has grown well despite being uneducated. Ariadne apologizes for being lacking and swears not to embarrass the cardinal. Someone agrees on the side, and it is the haughty mistress. Lucrezia warns Ariadne to be graceful as a woman all the time. Ariadne always thought of Lucrezia as the standard, but she looks no different from a lowly person. Ariadne knows how to make Lucrezia bitter in front of the cardinal, and she menacingly smiles. Ariadne bows to her and claims to be her best daughter, as she said. She respectfully calls Lucrezia a lady, like how the servants address her. A confused cardinal asks Lucrezia. The mistress gets flustered and asks Ariadne to call her mother. However, Ariadne calls her ma'am instead. Just then, someone arrives at the cardinal's office. Ariadne gets goosebumps as she hears the person's voice. Isabella welcomes Ariadne back to their family. Ariadne backs off as she feels creeped out. The sisters look at each other. Ariadne has always thought of Isabella as the perfect sister. Isabella had always had a beautiful smile, and that very smile stabbed Ariadne in the back. Ariadne won't be cowardly this time. Isabella reaches out her hand as she tells Ariadne to call her sister. Ariadne puts up a poker smile, and she thanks Isabella. The cardinal is happy to see the sisters getting along. He really likes it. Ariadne and the others go out of the cardinal's office. Lucrezia reminds Ariadne not to cause any trouble. This woman, Ariadne, hasn't done anything yet. Someone then screams as she refuses to have Ariadne as her sister, who grew up on a farm. Arabella points out how Ariadne is a lowborn. Before, Ariadne couldn't rebut, but she now knows how to break their spirits. Ariadne teases Arabella that their mother and father like Isabella more than her. Arabella gets mad and pushes Ariadne. However, Arabella's expression darkens as she sees Isabella down the stairs and in pain. Ariadne actually dodged and had Isabella get pushed instead. Arabella is scared of what she did. The cardinal comes out shouting after hearing the loud noise. Arabella gets flustered and points to Ariadne as the culprit. The cardinal immediately lashes out at Ariadne. Ariadne apologizes and claims that Isabella was protecting her. The two sisters are both surprised by Ariadne's words. Ariadne then tells their father that Arabella was joking around and pushed Ariadne down. Arabella starts exclaiming that she didn't do anything at all. Ariadne claims that she might be uneducated, but she doesn't lie. She then tells their father to ask Isabella. Isabella hesitates to answer. Ariadne wants her to her true colors. Isabella claims Arabella was just kidding around and asks their father to forgive Arabella. Ariadne smiles, seeing Isabella do a great job. This is a chance for Ariadne to be a good sister to her bullet half-sister. Arabella runs toward Isabella, who asks her to be careful next time. The cardinal then calls out to Arabella and punishes her by locking her in her room for 2 weeks with bread and water only. Arabella tries to plead that it was not her. The cardinal then extends the sentence by a week, seeing that Arabella is talking back. Servants help Isabella be treated. The cardinal looks for Lucrezia, as Arabella still claims that it was not her. Ariadne watches everything as the cardinal shouts and Isabella leaves. She smirks at how easy this is. Days later, Isabella refuses to get married to a rumored illegitimate child. She reminds her father that they should elevate their status. The cardinal put down his glasses and claimed that he also knew about the rumors. Cesare is officially the cousin of the crown prince but is actually the king's bastard son. The cardinal also doesn't want his daughter to marry such a person. Lucrezia then suggests marrying illegitimate children and naming Ariadne for the betrothal. The cardinal finds the suggestion tempting and menacingly smirks. Meanwhile, Ariadne fully accepts the fact that she went back in time. She swears not to make the same mistake this time. She wonders what to do to prevent her betrothal to Cesare. She thought of marrying someone else or running away after getting rich. The latter option is the best choice for her. As she crosses out the option to marry, she knows there will be no happy ending for her where Cesare falls in love with her, and they live happily ever after. What she experienced was the opposite. She feels angered by her memory and wants Cesare to pay for what he has done. Just then, a maid enters the room, bringing some clothes for Ariadne. Ariadne recognizes her as Isabella's personal maid, Miletta. Miletta orders her to get dressed and join the family dinner. Ariadne claims Miletta must be busy because she is not helping her get dressed. Miletta laughs at Ariadne and claims that Ariadne is old enough to dress herself. She further claims that Ariadne had no maids for her on the farm in the first place. She turns around as her head starts to ache. Ariadne taps Miletta's shoulder and slaps her out of nowhere. Ariadne tells Miletta to know her place. Miletta gets mad and exclaims that Ariadne is also a peasant maid's daughter. Ariadne's expression darkens. Miletta further exclaims that Ariadne is not even a nobleman's child but a clergyman's, while the other two ladies were born to a noblewoman. Miletta then wonders if the cardinal got her pregnant, her child will be at the same level as Ariadne. Ariadne raises her hand and slaps Miletta so hard that she falls. She claims that the slap was for insulting her father in her ugly bout of jealousy. She warns Miletta to watch her tongue and tells her to get out. As Miletta runs away, Ariadne feels the worst about being hit by her reality. She grits her teeth and swears not to let a man sway her life again. In order to become independent, Ariadne needs to cultivate her own power by finding an ally. Just then, Lucrezia, Isabella, and Miletta enter her room. Lucrezia gets mad at Ariadne for hitting a household member. Miletta acts like the total victim of the event. Lucrezia shouts at Ariadne, who is calmly facing them. Ariadne bows and claims that she can't hold herself back after Miletta insulted her father and Lucrezia. Everyone listens as Ariadne shares what Miletta uttered before her a few minutes ago. Miletta tries to make a point in front of Lucrezia. Ariadne adds that Miletta mentioned how the cardinal is of common stock. That is why Miletta doesn't want to serve Ariadne, who was born a peasant. Lucrezia will take Ariadne's side because the cardinal's bloodline is a delicate matter. And for the finale, Ariadne mentions how Miletta imagines getting the favor of the cardinal and carrying a child with the same status as Ariadne. Lucrezia looks like she is out for blood. She grabs Miletta's hair and speaks with 10 lashes. Miletta asks for forgiveness while being dragged away. Lucrezia then tells Ariadne to approach her instead of not being ladylike and striking a servant. Ariadne apologizes for losing her composure. As atonement for her behavior, she offers herself to be banished for 3 days in the Rambouillet shelter, surprising Lucrezia. Ariadne also asks to bring Miletta with her so they can make amends and gain the maid's faith. A flustered Lucrezia claims that the shelter is too much. Just then, Isabella suggests 5 days of atonement instead, smiling brightly. Ariadne gets creeped out and agrees with her sister while wearing a poker face. The next day, a carriage arrived somewhere. Ariadne gets out of it and sees the hopeless condition of the Rambouillet shelter. While the trembling Miletta watches her, Ariadne looks around. As expected, this is the perfect place to hatch her plan. Queen Margaret, King Leo III's wife, founded the Rambouillet shelter to aid the poor. However, the allocated treasure for this cause was meager, resulting in many peasants who entered the shelter perishing. Ariadne and Miletta both entered the shelter and encountered exhausted peasants. Ariadne couldn't contain her joy when she saw Miletta trembling in fear. Startled, Miletta turned away. When Ariadne called out to her, Ariadne further taunted Miletta by informing her that Isabella could no longer protect her. If Isabella had spoken up for Miletta, she wouldn't bear any scars on her back. But Miletta could only avert her gaze from Ariadne. Still chuckling at Miletta, Ariadne planned to join the rest of the peasants. Miletta, terrified of the shelter, remained unaware of Ariadne's plan to make her completely subservient. Ariadne walked, actively searching for someone, with Miletta closely following and trembling in fear. Surveying the area, Ariadne noticed numerous peasants on the brink of death and remembered that the person she sought resided in the shelter. In the distance, a woman with red hair called out to her sister. Ariadne and Miletta stopped. Upon hearing the voice, Ariadne smirked menacingly and asked Miletta if she saw the little girl with red hair. Miletta played coy. Ariadne then squeezed Miletta's shoulder and whispered, asking if she recognized her own little sister. Miletta's expression darkened, and she could only cover her mouth. Ariadne threatened Miletta, stating that if she didn't comply, she would leave her in the shelter to perish. In that case, Miletta would be reunited with her sister, and they would both die together. Miletta clenched her teeth but refused to admit it, continuously asking for forgiveness from Ariadne. Her expression was one of complete terror, as if she was about to wet herself. Ariadne grew serious, grabbing Miletta's shoulder and asking if she was implying that Ariadne was lying. Miletta's expression worsened when Ariadne grabbed her face and demanded an answer. Upon touching Miletta's face, Ariadne felt a surge of electricity. She saw a vision of a person wearing a white robe who asked Miletta and her sister, Sancha, who was smarter and more hardworking. They could only choose one of them. Miletta's sister replied that they were raised together and promised to work hard, pleading not to be separated. Miletta stared at her sister, growing angry. She shoved her and asked the person to choose her. Instead, Miletta claimed that her sister, named Sancha, was too frail to do real work and accused her of being a petty thief. The person, showing a faint smirk, took off her hood. It was Isabella, and she chose Miletta to work for her. Although Miletta was thankful for being chosen, Sancha felt saddened and called out to her sister. Miletta immediately grabbed her head and warned her to stay quiet. Miletta explained that one of them had to work so that they could both survive. She told Sancha to stay quiet and be patient. The vision ended when Miletta joined Isabella and left the shelter. Ariadne gasped for air and felt dizzy. Miletta offered help, causing Ariadne to freeze up as if seeing a ghost. Ariadne was confused about what she had seen, unsure if it was a hallucination or a vision from the past. Ariadne clenched her hand and walked towards Sancha, intending to confirm if what she had seen was true. Sancha, looking malnourished, asked if the person she was seeing was Miletta. Ariadne knelt in front of Sancha and inquired about her well-being. To confirm her suspicions, Ariadne asked if Sancha had an older sister who worked for a wealthy household. Sancha was surprised and immediately nodded. Ariadne continued, asking if her sister had told her that one of them had to succeed for both of them to have a better chance in life. Sancha couldn't believe that Ariadne knew what Miletta had said. Ariadne couldn't believe it either, that her suspicions and the vision she had seen were true. Ariadne stood up, thanked Sancha, and urged her to take care of herself. Sancha begged her not to leave and expressed her desire to speak to her sister. Sancha explained that she hadn't spoken to her sister since she left for work. Hearing this, Ariadne wanted to confirm if her sister had never contacted her. Sancha confirmed that it was true, and it was the first time she had seen her sister since then. Ariadne examined Sancha from head to toe and asked Miletta if what Sancha said was the truth. Miletta, sweating profusely, couldn't give a straight answer. She replied that she had never seen Sancha in her life before. Sancha's expression darkened, feeling abandoned. She grabbed Ariadne's clothes and begged for her help. Ariadne instructed Miletta to bring the shelter's manager. 2 days had passed since they met Sancha. Ariadne sat outside, leaning against a tree, starving. In a flashback, when Ariadne met the manager, she requested more food for Sancha. The manager declined, stating that they couldn't afford any special treatment, even if she was His Eminence's daughter. Ariadne understood and proposed an alternative. She sacrificed her own ration of meals for the day and asked for it to be given to Sancha. Ariadne felt weak, wishing only for Sancha to have a day's worth of meals, but it had already been 3 days. Ariadne was still puzzled by what she had seen before. It seemed like a part of Miletta's memories. Ariadne attempted to touch Miletta's face again, but nothing happened. Ariadne concluded that the vision required more than physical contact. Lost in thought, she was startled when Prince Alfonso reached out to offer her an apple. Looking up, she was surprised to see him and realized he was asking if she was hungry. Ariadne's expression turned to terror as she remembered killing Prince Alfonso. She quickly regained her composure and accepted the apple, realizing she hadn't sinned against the prince. Yet, accepting the apple meant accepting a new opportunity in her life. Despite the suddenness of the situation, Ariadne saw it as a great chance to get to know Prince Alfonso. He had heard a rumor that Ariadne had been giving her meals to a sick girl in the shelter. After eating the apple, Ariadne felt relieved after 3 days of fasting. Thinking about what to say to make a good impression, she responded to Prince Alfonso. Ariadne felt warm inside and chuckled when Prince Alfonso complimented her. They both understood the importance of food and rarely gave it away. Ariadne explained that she only gave away the bread because it was inedible, lacking milk and butter, which made the texture coarse. Prince Alfonso smiled and sarcastically asked if the bread from the shelter was really that bad. They had a wonderful conversation, but Ariadne knew she shouldn't confess that she knew his true identity. Prince Alfonso asked how long she would be staying, and she replied only until the next day. He then asked if she would continue giving away her food. Ariadne hadn't planned on it, but since she was able to eat an apple, she imagined she could last another day. Prince Alfonso was happy to hear this answer. He then took out delicious snacks from his pocket and gave them to her. Ariadne was surprised at first but realized that this might bring her closer to him. She accepted the food but had to bid farewell to the prince. Prince Alfonso felt disappointed, knowing their conversation would end so soon. Uncertain of when they would meet again, Ariadne had to leave it at that for now. Before departing, Prince Alfonso asked for her name. She smiled and told him her full name, Ariadne de Mer. Seeing her smiling face surrounded by beautiful flowers, Prince Alfonso couldn't help but show affection. Ariadne returned to the manor with Sancha after completing her punishment. They were immediately confronted by her stepmother, who thought Ariadne was playing a bad joke. Before her stepmother could do anything worse, Isabella rushed towards them and noticed the prince's initials on the handkerchief Ariadne handed her. Isabella recognized the initials right away. Ariadne explained that she had met the prince at the Rambouillet, thinking he was inspecting the place since the queen oversees it. Ariadne had only wanted to take care of Sancha's health, but instead, the prince entrusted the child to her care. She didn't want to refuse the token and insult her father's good name. Her stepmother was still angry, considering it inappropriate to bring a peasant into the manor without permission. She asked if the prince had also asked Ariadne to insult her stepmother. As they were about to be kicked out, Isabella intervened and offered to intern at the Rambouillet. The mother slapped Isabella, stating that such a place was not fit for a lady. Isabella requested for Sancha to stay and promised that if she were to meet the prince at a party, it would be a perfect story to appeal to the family's benevolence. An argument ensued between the mother and daughter, which was part of Ariadne's plan. All Ariadne needed was for Sancha to work at the manor. Lost in her thoughts, Isabella snatched the handkerchief and thanked Ariadne for her help. Ariadne realized that nothing had changed and clenched her hand. She understood that anything she had could be taken away on a whim. Sancha expressed gratitude for Ariadne's help and swore to repay her kindness one day. Ariadne patted her head and thanked her. After a few days, Ariadne's family received an invitation from the queen. Her stepmother and sister could only guess the queen's intentions. Ariadne, looking from the stairs, felt disgusted, since, in her previous life, neither of them was ever invited to the palace. Arriving in her room, both Miletta and Sancha were inside, informing Ariadne to get dressed as a carriage from the palace had arrived for her. Surprised by the invitation, Ariadne glanced at the bed and saw her clothes. She smiled mischievously and asked Sancha to try on her outfit, just for fun. According to the sacred scripture, Saint Gon of Jesarch was revered for 2 martyrdom acts. In his first martyrdom, he died alone and was shunned by those around him. However, he performed a resurrection miracle and sacrificed himself again to prevent a catastrophe in the realm. Only then was Gon of Jesarch praised by the people. The nobles of San Carlo enjoy church sermons about Saint Gon's second sacrifice, but today's sermon mainly focused on his first sacrifice, spoken in the language of Gallico Kingdom, Queen Margaret's homeland. Ariadne assumed that Lucrezia, her stepmother, and Isabella didn't understand a single word of today's sermon. Ariadne knew Lucrezia lacked refinement, and Isabella had recently started learning Gallica. Ariadne noticed a person from a distance, assuming it was Queen Margaret. She remembered only seeing the queen in portraits in her past life, but she could already tell by her dignified air. As the sermon was about to end but still in Gallica, both Lucrezia and Isabella said amen out loud, drawing attention. People started whispering to each other, admiring Isabella's beauty. Isabella complimented the queen for requesting the sermon about Gon of Jesarch's martyrdom, sharing that it was one of her favorite passages from the scripture. Proudly, Lucrezia asked Isabella which part was her favorite. Isabella expressed her love for the second sacrifice, confusing Ariadne as the sermon focused on the first sacrifice. The people in the church were surprised by Isabella's interpretation and whispered about her immaturity and envy of the saint's fame. Ariadne saw that Isabella would make their entire family a laughingstock. She immediately shared that her favorite part was the saint's act of courage, explaining how she understood his fear of facing death yet still bravely confronting it. People around Ariadne showered her with compliments. She felt relieved, thinking that what she did was probably enough to save their family's reputation. As they left for the lobby, the queen noticed Ariadne, recognizing her knowledge of Gallica. The queen was introduced to the wife and daughters of Cardinal de Mere, the person Ariadne least expected, who had insulted her former fiancé in her past life, complimented Isabella's dress. The woman inquired about the dressmaker, and Isabella mentioned their family seamstress. Upon hearing Isabella, the woman scoffed and insulted them, suggesting the seamstress might not have the time and pointing out the difference in outfits between Ariadne and Isabella. Lucrezia felt insulted as the woman brought up the illegitimacy of Ariadne. The woman stated that children shouldn't be blamed for their parents' transgressions. Isabella replied that Ariadne had been suffering from ill health and had recently returned from the countryside. She added that their seamstress was working hard to prepare appropriate clothes for Ariadne. Isabella explained that she had lent Ariadne her own dress for the time being, attributing any misunderstanding to her taste in clothing. Ariadne realized Isabella's intention but still followed along. When Ariadne stood up and turned to show the dress, her dirty chemise was revealed to everyone. This was part of Ariadne's plan to humiliate Isabella. Not only was Isabella questioned about the clothes she supposedly owned, but also her mother, and how she treated her daughter as less than a common maid. The queen silenced everyone and asked Isabella if the chemise once belonged to her. Isabella couldn't answer directly. The queen noticed Isabella's lies and asked both Lucrezia and Isabella to return home. Ariadne felt satisfaction as Lucrezia was treated like her father's mistress. The queen instructed a helper to escort Ariadne and provide her with a proper chemise. Ariadne was caught off guard by the queen's words. As Ariadne followed the helper, she realized the place was familiar since she had stayed in the palace for 9 years as Cesare's fiancée. Closing her eyes, she accidentally bumped into the helper and overheard her greeting someone. When Ariadne saw Alfonso, both of them were surprised to see each other once again. Upon seeing Alfonso, Ariadne quickly composed herself and acted as if it was her first time meeting him as a prince. Matron Carla, a trusted attendant of Queen Margaret, immediately warned Ariadne about her manners. Matron Carla introduced Alfonso with his formal title as the sole scion of King Leo III and Queen Margaret, Alfonso de Carlo. Ariadne suspected that the queen would be aware of her interaction with the prince. Ariadne greeted Alfonso again, this time with better manners. Matron Carla and Alfonso argued because the prince wanted to keep his title a secret from Ariadne. Alfonso enjoyed being treated as a friend by Ariadne, which angered Matron Carla due to their different social statuses. While staring at Alfonso, Ariadne realized he resembled a rebellious youth. However, when their eyes met, Alfonso smiled faintly at her. He grabbed Ariadne's wrist and happily dragged her to a garden. Concerned they might be followed, Alfonso suddenly let go of her hand. Ariadne laughed at his reaction and teased him about treating him as His Highness to avoid any offense. Embarrassed by his actions, Alfonso suggested that Ariadne continue calling him His Highness. Since they didn't run away, Ariadne proposed using secret nicknames instead. Alfonso was surprised by the suggestion, thinking it might be rude, but Ariadne explained that using his name openly would reveal his true identity. Ariadne knew that the idea of a secret connection would be tempting, and eventually Alfonso agreed. Annoyed that her previous suggestions had been turned down, Ariadne grabbed his hand and wrote his nickname, Dire, with her finger. Alfonso didn't react, just stared at her, and then clenched his fist, confessing something to her. Ariadne realized she was probably summoned to the palace because of Alfonso, as he had informed the queen about their encounter at the Rambouillet shelter. Thinking Alfonso was oblivious, Ariadne was surprised to discover that he was aware of what was happening. Alfonso understood that the queen kept an eye on her because she cared for him but felt suffocated. Realizing he had been expressing his frustrations, he apologized and wanted to change the subject. Ariadne surprised Alfonso by caressing his head and showing concern for him. She excused herself to avoid Matron Carla's anger, leaving Alfonso unable to respond, his face turning red as she departed. At the manor of Cardinal de Mere, Lucrezia was seething with anger due to how the queen treated her. Her tantrum caused a vase in the manor to break, and she insulted the queen, calling her a filthy wench from Gallico. When Ariadne arrived home, she greeted her stepmother, which further enraged Lucrezia. Lucrezia accused Ariadne of being two-faced and claimed that the chemise she wore was another one of her schemes. Ariadne knew that Lucrezia might be dense, but her instincts were sharp. Ariadne refuted the accusations, stating that the chemise she wore was her only one. Lucrezia became even angrier and demanded to see Ariadne's caretaker. Lucrezia ordered a search of Ariadne's room to ensure she wasn't hiding any additional chemises. Faintly smiling, Ariadne knew there were no other chemises in the room, no matter how thoroughly they searched. She thought of another plan to silence Lucrezia's accusations. Suddenly, Miletta announced that she knew who the real culprit was. Ariadne became scared since Miletta was present when she executed her plan and forgot to silence her. Miletta informed Lucrezia that she knew who the culprit was and placed the blame on Sancha. Both Sancha and Ariadne exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Lucrezia swiftly grabbed Sancha's hair, accusing her of theft. Miletta reached into Sancha's bag, retrieving the chemise, and presenting it to Lucrezia. Though relieved that she wouldn't bear the blame for her scheme, Ariadne remained furious and struggled to process the situation. Despite enduring a beating from her mistress, the kind-hearted Sancha denied the accusations. In a state of panic, a red dot appeared beneath Ariadne's eye, pulsating incessantly. Her ring finger wouldn't stop twitching. A voice spoke of the golden rule, warning that one must pay the price for their wrongdoings and reap rewards for virtuous deeds. It questioned Ariadne's betrayal of others and profiting from their suffering, while lamenting her own sense of betrayal. Ariadne felt bewildered, unsure of whose words she was hearing. Lucrezia, still enraged, brandished a sharp object and moved to stab Sancha. Ariadne's pleas fell on deaf ears as Lucrezia advanced, prompting Ariadne to leap forward and shield Sancha, resulting in her being stabbed in the back. Surprised by Ariadne's selfless act, Sancha immediately inquired about Ariadne's well-being. Ariadne implored Sancha to tell the truth, but Sancha refused. Observing both of them, Lucrezia concluded that Ariadne and Sancha had conspired to mock her. Just as Lucrezia was about to strike them, the cardinal arrived, attempting to defuse the situation. Ariadne whisked Sancha away to her room while her stepmother and father argued. Overwhelmed, Sancha panicked upon seeing Ariadne's wound and wanted to retrieve ointment for her. Ariadne stopped her and questioned why Sancha hadn't told the truth, as Ariadne alone was responsible for the situation. Sancha replied that she hadn't spoken the truth because Ariadne had saved her. She vowed to repay Ariadne with kindness and remain by her side until the end. Ariadne couldn't help but shed tears upon hearing Sancha's words. In her previous life, Ariadne had no one. She was shunned by her family and abandoned by her love. Ariadne had never experienced such loyalty pledged to her. Initially intending to use Sancha as a mere pawn, Ariadne now saw an act of loyalty undeserving of betrayal. Ariadne embraced Sancha and promised to protect her until her last breath. She vowed to hold Miletta accountable for her wrongful actions. Ariadne declared that no one would dare threaten them again. Sancha held Ariadne tightly, offering consolation. Both found solace in each other's arms. Several days passed, with Sancha attending to the clothes while Ariadne remained fixated on her recent experiences. She continually touched her ring finger, recalling the throbbing red dot and twitching finger. Ariadne's curiosity about the voice she heard persisted. Sancha warned her not to touch the wound, as it would only worsen. Ariadne then asked if it appeared to be growing. Sancha responded that fingers don't grow overnight. Ariadne remarked that Sancha had changed and was no longer the adorable stray kitten she had found on the side of the street. Sancha's sharp tongue had also emerged. Sancha brushed off Ariadne's comment and informed her that she had Gallica lessons to attend, as her tutor would arrive soon. Ariadne, having forgotten, told Sancha they would meet later before departing. While walking down the hallway, Ariadne could only think of the time she would spend with Sancha after her lesson. Suddenly, she overheard her stepmother conversing with the cardinal about sending Ariadne away. Ariadne's warm expression turned cold in an instant. Initially, Lucrezia had wanted Ariadne to live at the manor, but her stubbornness had become unbearable. Now, Lucrezia wished for Ariadne to leave as soon as possible, as they planned to marry her off to her former lover, Count Cesare. The only reason Cardinal de Mere refuses to marry Isabella to Cesare is because Isabella is far too valuable. She is too precious to be wed to someone like Cesare. For the Cardinal, Isabella is his most treasured possession until the day he decides to sell her off. He educates, grooms, and cherishes her so that his investment will yield wealth and status. The Cardinal prefers Prince Alfonso to marry Isabella because he is the kingdom's sole heir. Ariadne is devising a plan that involves offering greater value to the prince than Isabella does. If her plan fails, she ensures that Isabella becomes worthless to the prince. Ariadne enters the room where the Gallica lessons are being held. Before entering, she stops in front of the door and smirks. Their instructor, Madame Romani, announces that they will end the lesson early as they have been invited to a special state mass. Ariadne greets Madame Romani in Gallica, surprising not only the instructor, but also Arabella and Isabella. Madame Romani compliments Ariadne on her fluent Gallica. Ariadne humbly thanks the instructor and tells her that she grew up with a Gallican, which greatly aided her progress when Madame Romani began teaching her. Madame Romani tells Ariadne that her manners are as good as her flawless Gallica and sees talent in her. Arabella complains about Ariadne's fluency in Gallica and accuses her of cheating. Ariadne covers her mouth and lectures Arabella, explaining that it is rude to raise her voice in the presence of their instructor. Madame Romani then asks if Ariadne has debuted yet, as she observes that Ariadne is now fit to be presented to society if she wishes. Isabella, with a darkened expression, is mad at Ariadne for stealing the limelight from her. However, she composes herself and plans to mesmerize all the people of San Carlo. Her plan consists of tightening her corset, ensuring the cross hangs chastely over her exposed bosom. She will be using the finest pearl powder from Hini for her foundation, and her cheeks and lips will glow with lavish rosewater from Gita. The kingdom of Etruscan is a theocracy where the sovereign rule derives from a God-given divine right. Scripture states that virtuous souls are reincarnated as nobles and royals, while those who have sinned are reborn as peasants or worse. Therefore, the venerable souls of the aristocracy are duty-bound to guide and rule over the lowly souls of peasants. It is a nation under God, where the church grants legitimacy to the monarch. This is why the church ultimately reigns supreme in Etruscan. In this God-fearing nation, there is one occasion, celebrated with great importance. Once a month, the kingdom's populace gathers, from the king to the lowest peasant, to hear the cardinal deliver the words of God in what is known as a state mass. The cardinal and his family have arrived. Men are happy to catch even a glimpse of Isabella, while women envy the accessories she wears. They can only wish to have the courage to speak to her at least once. Isabella smirks menacingly, pleased that all the attention is focused on her. As she walks elegantly, people start talking about the person behind her as no one recognizes her. Isabella turns and snickers at Ariadne, who is wearing minimal makeup, has her hair tied in a messy bun, and is wearing a simple dress and a tacky silver cross around her neck. Ariadne doesn't care about her appearance in front of everyone. She knows that no matter how hard Isabella tries to flaunt her worth, no one will remember her after today's event. Ariadne assumes that if she is truly reliving her past, a deeply sacrilegious scandal will unfold during today's event, shaking the nation to its core. This event will lead to her betrothal to her former lover, Cesare. Due to an incident, Cardinal de Mere was saved by the Etruscan king, Leo III. In return for his help, the king made one proposal. He wished for the cardinal to become an ally to his powerless bastard son, Cesare. The illegitimate son of King Leo III was betrothed to the cardinal's daughter, Ariadne, who was considered worthless. Ariadne plans to change her past, but if she fails, she will end up marrying Cesare again. She hopes that the secret will unfold exactly as it did in her previous life. Cesare observes the cardinal's family, especially Isabella, believing that she is a fitting prize for him. Cesare de Como is the most eligible bachelor in all of San Carlo, whether it be precious gems, the finest stallions, or the fairest debutantes in the land. All of it is firmly within Cesare's grasp. Above all, he is the son of the king and his most cherished mistress, Countess Rubina. He is revered and admired by all of Etruscan. Cesare claims Isabella is the only person fitting to be his wife. He plans to present his marriage proposal to Cardinal de Mere. He also plans to inform his father when he sees him the following month. Cesare then hears laughter above and sees both his father and Alfonso laughing with each other. This puts an angered look on Cesare's face. Unfortunately, Cesare can only be treated by the king as his son in private chambers, away from prying eyes. Cesare turns his back against them and notices Ariadne. He then asks her mother if she knows anything about her. Her mother tells him about Ariadne and how she has already impressed the queen. Surprised that Ariadne was able to gain the queen's attention, Cesare asks what she did to achieve that. Rubina lectures him not to judge a book by its cover, since Ariadne was able to win the favor of the queen at a young age. Despite being inexperienced, there may be more to her than meets the eye. Their conversation continues but stops when Cesare notices that the sermon is about to begin. Looking down, he sees the famed Apostle of Acerto. The Apostle of Acerto is a clergyman with a fervent following among the poor and downtrodden, unlike the traditional interpretation of the Holy Scriptures, which contends that those who sinned in their previous life are reborn as lowly peasants in the next. The Apostle teaches the people that even the lowliest of the peons can learn and practice the sacred teachings of God and one day reach salvation as faithful children of the Lord. He claims that even peasants can elevate themselves in the eyes of the Most High. The Apostle of Acerto begins his sermon and surprises the people, especially the cardinal. People are talking about how the apostle's sermons are blasphemous. The cardinal realizes that the apostle is a heretic and aims to undermine their nation's very foundation. He cannot believe that he allowed the apostle to preach at his mass, knowing that the apostle's sermon would result in his own persecution as a heretic. The cardinal wants to stop the apostle, but he was personally invited by the Pope himself. If he stops the apostle, it would be a direct insult to the Pope. The cardinal is now in a panic about what to do in this situation. When the apostle proclaims that Saint John of Jerusalem was once a child of man just like the rest of them, Ariadne intervenes and calls out the apostle for his blasphemous sermon. They both debate in front of the people about their beliefs and which they should believe more, the apostle or the scriptures they have lived by all their lives. The guard then asks the king if they should escort the cause of the commotion. The king asks if the guard is referring to the girl, to which the guard responds affirmatively. The king smirks, believing that the apostle should be the one being dragged out instead of Ariadne. He then asks for her name, and Alfonso answers, telling the king that she is his friend and one of the people he most admires. Ariadne grabbed the apostle's collar and asked if he dared to question the Holy Scriptures. The cardinal was surprised by Ariadne's actions and planned to regain control of the situation before it was too late. The doors of the church were opened, and the Inquisition entered, asking for the heretic criminal, priest Alejandro. The people of San Carlo were conversing with each other about the current event. The cardinal was surprised by the visit of the Inquisition and, in a panic, ran to explain the situation. The Apostle of Acerto, priest Alejandro, had been charged with misleading the good people of Etruscan and was sentenced to be excommunicated by the Inquisition. The inquisitor then called out the cardinal for allowing priest Alejandro, a known heretic, to deliver a sermon in his chapel and demanded an explanation for his part in the blasphemous sermon. The cardinal's expression darkened. He felt betrayed and believed that the plan was devised by Pope Ludovico. The cardinal assumed that the Pope had devised the plot to keep his influence in check. The fact that the inquisitor arrived as the representative of the Pope meant that the Pope's judgment was final and absolute. The cardinal wanted to explain that what happened was a mistake and that he was not the one who invited the apostle, but he was cut off by his daughter, Ariadne. Ariadne requested to speak with the inquisitor. In Ariadne's previous life, both the apostle's sermon and the arrival of the inquisitor had occurred. This meant that what would happen next would be a gamble for her. The inquisitor informed her that she had no right to interfere with the matters of the church. Ariadne responded by telling him that she was the cardinal's second daughter and created a story that her father knew of priest Alejandro's heresy and had prepared an arena in which priest Alejandro could be refuted in public. The cardinal was surprised by what Ariadne confessed and told her to stop talking. The inquisitor did not believe a word Ariadne said and accused her of mocking their work. The inquisitor added that since the cardinal had invited the priest to speak and made a mockery of the entire mess by hiding behind his daughter, both the cardinal and Ariadne were accused of mocking the sanctity of the mass. Ariadne felt pressure from the inquisitor but knew that backing down now would mean her end. She then confessed that the cardinal had only agreed for the priest to speak because priest Alejandro was a guest of the Pope and was sent to San Carlo on the Pope's direct order. If the cardinal had refused the Pope's request, it would have been an insult to his reputation. Ariadne noticed that her words were working and continued to inform the inquisitor of the cardinal's supposed plan. She told the inquisitor that the cardinal knew of priest Alejandro's heresy and had already prepared a theological dissection of the apostles' teachings. The cardinal could only follow Ariadne's story to survive the Inquisition. The inquisitor now had doubts and was unsure of the truth. They overheard the people of San Carlo agreeing with the cardinal and Ariadne as she defended the honor of the Holy Scriptures. The people complimented Ariadne on her bravery and thought that she was following in her father's footsteps, considering her a hero. The inquisitor could no longer rebuke and wanted to excuse themselves from the place. The cardinal wanted the inquisitor to take accountability for their actions. Ariadne felt glad, knowing that this time she could be free from her betrothal to Cesare. In the king's audience chamber, the king was talking with his servant about how spirited Ariadne was. He even thought that it was like watching a play performed by her and the Pope. He wished to reward her for her clear-headed retorts and thought of the heart of the deep blue sea. The servant was surprised to hear that. The heart of the deep blue sea is a uniquely sized and strikingly radiant sapphire believed to have been originally brought to the realm of man by a pod of dolphins. It is a priceless treasure, coveted by collectors across the land and, in particular, the object of ardent fixation for Countess Rubina. The king knew of his mistress's fixation on the said jewelry, which is why if he granted it to the cardinal's second daughter, it would eventually return to him once Ariadne married into his household. The king now had plans to betroth her to his son, Cesare. The cardinal asked Ariadne how she gained knowledge of theology. He was surprised when Ariadne responded that she taught herself by reading his books to pass the time. The cardinal still had doubts because Ariadne displayed an insight that hardly befitted a self-taught 15-year-old. Ariadne knew that her father would doubt her answer. She then told him about what she had learned, particularly Wycliffe's reflections on the nature of the Holy Sun and Pelagian's letters on the study of the Trinitas. She further explained her opinion on both books when asked if she had read them. Ariadne knew that they were obscure treatises at the moment, but they would become essential reads for all nobility in a few years' time. The cardinal then asked if she wanted to join him and the other priests for a scripture study in the great chapel. Surprised by the offer, Ariadne declined and told her father that she wished to study alone and not embarrass him. In reality, she didn't want to reveal all her secrets right away. As Ariadne was about to leave, the cardinal called her again and complimented her for what had happened at the state mass. Hearing the compliment from her father, Ariadne felt a warm feeling. At the palace, Cesare was binge drinking wine. Her mother, Countess Rubina, asked if he had heard the latest news about Ariadne. Ariadne was now the hero of San Carlo. Cesare didn't care about the news and continued drinking wine, which annoyed his mother. Rubina lectured him on his duties, such as choosing a spouse who was virtuous and wise, just as he was, to ascend the throne one day. Cesare stopped and told his mother to wake up from her dreams, as he could clearly see that Alfonso would ascend, not him. Cesare screamed at his mother when she told him that his father's love for him knew no bounds. He asked if that was the truth, why he was condemned to the life of an unlanded noble, a king's son who was bestowed nothing but a measly countdom. Countess Rubina was enraged by what he said and threw a glass against the wall. She told him that he would be her king one day. Countess Rubina informed him that the king was planning to bestow the heart of the deep blue sea upon Ariadne. Cesare knew the reason why his mother coveted the object. She had once been foretold the future by a fortune teller that whoever possessed the heart of the deep blue sea would rise to the throne one day. Eventually, she became the king's woman and bore him a son. She then told Cesare that everything she did was only for him and asked him to bring the jewelry to her. A letter was sent, inviting Ariadne to visit the palace to receive a gift from the queen. Ariadne was told to behave herself and avoid trouble by her father. Ariadne was surprised when her father personally escorted her to the palace. Ariadne's sole intention was to avoid her betrothal to Cesare, but she received a reward from the queen instead. When Ariadne saw her reflection, she thought that her clothes may be a bit bland. She had an idea and immediately went to the garden. Ariadne was searching for peonies in the rear courtyard of the queen's palace. She was startled when she heard someone calling her name. When she was told to look up, she saw Alfonso sitting high up in the tree.
Ariadne gets called into her father's chamber, and he questions her about her vast knowledge of theology, to which Ariadne claims that she read the books of theology in his study to pass her time. The moment her father realizes that she had been self-teaching herself, he starts to think to himself how a mere 15 years old can display such knowledge without even having any proper training by some teacher, and Ariadne feels like her father started doubting her as she thought that he would. Ariadne then goes forward to explain how she finished reflections on the true nature of the Holy Sun and also letters on the study of the Trinitas to prove her claim. Not only did she claim having the knowledge of vast theology, but she then elaborates on the whole thing to prove her claims. After hearing the explanation of Ariadne, her father turns around to let her know that he holds a scripture study with a number of priests in the great chapel and asks if she would like to join them in their study. But knowing that she cannot show her way so soon, she decides to act humble, saying that she wouldn't dare to impose on their personal study, while claiming that there are many chances that she would end up embarrassing them instead if it happened in the first place. When she claims that she would like to continue studying at home instead, her father advises her to leave his chamber, while Ariadne continues to think about how it could have gone way worse for her. But before she is about to leave, her father calls her from behind and decides to praise her, while she bows down to him to show him respect. Meanwhile, Cesare's mother comes in asking him about his knowledge of Cardinal de Mere's second daughter, while he continues to gulp down wine while sitting exposed to sunlight. His mother explains how devout a believer she is, and not only that, but she also praises her for being the hero of San Carlo, as if she is following the good cardinal's footsteps, which leaves the entire kingdom of Etruscan enamored with her. Instead of focusing on his mother's words, Cesare continues to pour more and more wine to chug it down while his mother witnesses his idiotic act. She then raises his voice, calling him out for the fact that he has a duty to choose for himself a spouse who is highly virtuous and wise, while reminding him that he has a duty to ascend to the throne one day when it comes. The whole situation makes Cesare act up against his mother, claiming that she has to know that Alfonso has an iron grip over the throne already, which makes him quite the useless one in front of them. Even so, his mother isn't ready to hear any kind of excuse, claiming that his father truly loves him quite well, which he doesn't even know about. As soon as Cesare hears his father's name out of her mouth, he starts to react, demanding to know from her why he decided to condemn him to the life of an unlanded noble to rot within concealed palace walls while clenching his fist. His mother then gets even angrier, as he decides to raise his voice against her, so she throws the wine glass on the wall to let him know his place. Then she grabs onto his collar, saying that he will surely be the king, no matter what happens in the future. She then informs him that the Majesty already planned to bestow the heart of the deep blue sea upon the girl, and reminds him why she had been coveting the stones all these years, as Cesare had been once foretold by the fortune-teller that the one who possesses the heart of the deep blue sea will rise to the throne one day, which inspired her to collect the stones all these years. That is the main reason she had to become the king's woman, and even delivered him a son while following the fortune told by the fortune-teller, and making him realize that she is only doing all these things for him. She then asks Cesare to bring her the heart of the deep blue sea to make everything happen as it is said according to the fortune-teller's words. At the same time, Ariadne is seen with her father, who then asks her to keep herself out of any kind of trouble as they get out of the carriage together. Ariadne couldn't believe that her father would escort her to the king's palace, as the queen herself had invited her on Majesty's behalf to grant her a reward for her sake. Even though she had been trying to avoid her betrothal to Cesare, but the matter is now getting out of her control. Then when she starts to head into the palace's courtyard looking for peonies, as she remembers from her past life, she gets called out by someone, and it seems that the person is none other than Alfonso, who is yelling her name while sitting on the branch of a tree nearby. Alfonso then advises Ariadne to climb up the tree, and Alfonso suddenly realizes that she had been wearing a gorgeous white dress which would probably get ruined and gasps. At that moment, Alfonso then asks Ariadne if she could climb up on his lap, which starts to feel too forward for Ariadne, despite the fact that he is a prince. But as she reminisces the fact that she had been ruined and betrayed by Cesare in her previous life, she decides to listen to him, as he is her only way to escape from Cesare's death claws, as if he is the only golden ticket she has. She then ends up listening to Alfonso's request, and it seems that Alfonso was trying to keep her dress clean all this time while she was wondering about something else. Then Alfonso asks Ariadne about her reason to visit the palace all of a sudden, and Ariadne claims that she has a schedule for an audience with the queen, which makes Alfonso remember the special day, while adding that his father speaks the world of her with high grace. It seems that the king was feeling down for the reason that he couldn't grant her a knighthood, and Ariadne remarks that she is sad about that as well, since her wish was to become a knight in shining armor from the beginning. As they continue to talk, Alfonso states that he will turn her into a knight himself someday, which makes Ariadne chuckle on her own for the fact that she will be swearing an oath of allegiance to him soon enough. Instead of waiting for that moment someday, Ariadne starts swearing upon the sanctity of her soul to pledge her everlasting loyalty to Alfonso from that moment on. She promises that it will be an honor for her to protect him in any moment of hardship or strife, as she will be placing the well-being of the prince above her own life. After hearing the magical and enchanted words out of Ariadne's mouth, Alfonso starts to feel the butterflies inside his stomach as he praises her for her determination. He thinks that with bright and loyal people like her by his side, he might become a half-decent king after all, in the end, while keeping his humble picture in front of her. After seeing the humble face of Alfonso, Ariadne starts to regret as she lured Alfonso into a trap and made him die a dog's death, which still makes her ashamed that she is now swearing an oath to protect his life. She still continues to wonder what will happen if he somehow gets to know what she had done to him in the past as she clenches her dress, reminiscing what will happen in the future as there is chance that Alfonso might start to hate her if he ever gets to know about it. As she continues to wonder about all these things, she suddenly slips from the tree branch. But before she is about to fall on the ground, Alfonso ends up catching her in the air as he is concerned about her well-being. Ariadne then thanks him for his grace while smiling, and Alfonso suggests that she should be more cautious about herself as Ariadne starts to feel giddy about the whole thing as if her heart starts to feel the bliss of his love. Then Alfonso asks Ariadne what she was doing in the garden before he found her as he knows that it isn't the way of his mother's audience chamber. Ariadne then clears up the incident by saying that she was looking for a flower to decorate her hair as she was worried that her outfit was feeling a little drab, which makes Alfonso say that he finds it rather striking instead. When Ariadne starts to feel rather surprised, she claims that it would have been better for her to wear some jewelry to add some glamour as she must be the only lady to seek an audience with the queen in such a sorry state because of her achievements. While she continues to think about her intentions, Alfonso notices what is truly weighing on Ariadne's mind, so he then makes her wear a locket of the cross on her neck while her whole hair is messy. When Ariadne notices his feeling about the situation as he had used his decoration and tied her hair himself, she starts to chuckle on her own as she had never seen this version of Alfonso, who is quite unembellished and innocent. Ariadne then appreciates his gracious thoughts and kindness before heading into the queen's audience to accept the reward she was supposed to get from her. The moment comes as Ariadne is about to accept the reward from the queen. The queen remarks saying that she never thought that the kind would ever reward her with something like that. When Ariadne wonders what she is about to be given by the king, because of her work, the queen reveals that she is about to be given the heart of the deep blue sea, and Ariadne plops down on the ground yelling that she cannot accept this sort of reward from her. After seeing her reaction, the whole audience keeps looking at her straight wondering why she wouldn't accept this sort of thing even though it is an honor for her family which is supposed to be treasured. But only Ariadne knows what problem she is about to face. After having the precious stone to herself, while it might be quite a treasure for someone else as she already has the experience of her previous life, she knows that everyone who wants to stone themselves will be out for Ariadne to stab her in the back. When the queen sees Ariadne's reaction, she claims that she understands her situation, but she doesn't know what to do otherwise as the king has ordered it to happen himself, so the family heirloom is about to go to her. Before handing the jewel to Ariadne, the queen states that knowing that she doesn't have the power to protect the jewel herself, it will be better to make all those who are obsessed with the jewel come to a standoff, which typically means that she would have them keep each other in check. When Ariadne realizes that she will have to take the jewel herself anyways, she decides to act proud and brave about it. Then when she asks for a favor from the queen, she lashes out at Ariadne as if she had said something shameless in front of the whole audience. But then when the situation calms down, the queen chuckles in the most ecstatic way as Ariadne keeps on sweating on her own as the queen decided to hear out her thoughts. It seems that the queen has been fixated on her mind to give some kind of gift on her behalf. When the queen continues to praise Ariadne, the maids continue to speak of Ariadne as if she is the younger reflection of the queen herself, as she is almost as witty and demure as she were. But while remembering her younger days of becoming a queen, the queen hopes that Ariadne will have easier days than her as fate didn't treat her so mindlessly. When Ariadne leaves with all the pieces of jewelry given by the queen to meet her sister, she is quite ecstatic to see them all while she continues to check up on the amethyst earrings. She then continues to brag how the earrings' color matches her eyes, which her mother starts to agree with by saying that the earrings feel like they were made only for her. Isabella then starts grabbing onto Ariadne asking if she can keep the earrings while claiming that these are looking quite stunning on her, which makes Ariadne's mind go blank. To butter up the whole situation even more, Isabella's mother then asks Ariadne to leave the earring for her, while remarking that it is better for someone to share the joy, rather than keeping it all for herself. At the same time, she claims that she will be holding on to the 50 ducato on her behalf until she has any need of it, as it is quite heavy for her to handle for now. Then Ariadne remarks that she would love to share all the pieces of jewelry with them, but she doesn't have the liberty to do so, which makes Isabella directly call her greedy, without even thinking twice about the situation. Then Ariadne claims that she didn't mean to act like a greedy person, but the queen gifted all this jewelry personally to her, and had both of their initials engraved on all of these ornaments for betterment. Ariadne then reminds them how giving away a royal gift of this sort without permission can turn into a punishable insult against the royal household, which surprised the mother and Isabella both at the same time, since they weren't expecting it to happen all of a sudden. To create the situation even mesmerizing, Ariadne takes out the acknowledgement paper of the receipt of 50 ducato in gold, which is done on behalf of Rambouillet Shelter of the Queen Margaret. She expresses that the entire sum has already been donated in her name, which makes the mother react so much that she starts to shake Ariadne continuously in anger, as if she had committed some grave sin. She couldn't hold the fact that Ariadne decided to cast away all the money, while Ariadne claims that it was a small price to pay for their family's good name, since the queen herself commended the de Mere family for their service to those less fortunate than them. After hearing out the whole story, Lucrezia goes on to raise her hand against Ariadne, but before she is about to do so, her husband calls out to her from behind, claiming that he isn't surprised even a bit after seeing her harsh behavior. He then reminds her how many prying eyes are now scrutinizing their household, so he advises her not to let the greed blind her so she could stop humiliating herself even further down the road. Ariadne's father then remarks on the fact that she had been granted the heart of the deep blue sea and claims that he is interested in taking a look at it. As soon as he lays his eyes on the stone, he recalls the fact why it is called the most precious jewel in the entire kingdom and offers her to keep it in his study since she doesn't have a safe on her own. The moment her father offers her help, Ariadne starts to stutter in speaking, while wondering why the thing that she was waiting for was taking so much time. Then suddenly, someone knocks on their door, and it seems that some people from the royal palace came to deliver the royal order of Queen Margaret, as she wanted Ariadne to have a self-dedicated storage to keep the precious jewel. But when the people wanted to know which room they had to select, Ariadne goes on to talk about her room in the attic on the 3rd floor, but her father interrupts her by saying that it will be in the westernmost room on the 2nd floor, which belongs to his elder son, Ippolito, which gets the couple into a shocking argument, which feels like just the perfect moment to Ariadne as she continues to smirk on her own. It seems that Ariadne has gotten a new way to have a new room for her, so she decides to leave for her new room, and it seems that the bedroom has a study included with it as a privilege of being a cardinal's eldest son. It seems that the whole planning was done by Ariadne previously when she decided to have a conversation with the queen privately, and it even worked out gracefully in the end. But Ariadne couldn't think that the queen was about to accept the offer at any cost and would even serve her with various precious jewelry at the same time. Also, none of them would be given to Isabella, knowing the current situation. Soon, a maid comes in to let her know that there was another messenger from the palace, as he had left something for her in a gift box. Then, as soon as she releases the clip from the box, she notices a precious amethyst hair clip along with a note for her, which has the letter A written on it, which starts to make her smile on her own. The next day, when the special maid of Ariadne, Sancha, is about to prepare the bed for her, Ariadne claims that she doesn't have to do that herself, but Sancha makes it clear that the new maids will have to prove themselves before having the authority to take care of her, as they aren't worthy of touching her at all. While they are talking to each other, Arabella comes into the room holding on to her musical instrument, claiming that she isn't in her room to play, but she is present in the room to keep an eye on Ariadne to make sure that she isn't up to some funny business. Ariadne realizes that Arabella is quite bored, but it is only normal for her since no one truly has the time for her, as the cardinal only thinks about his elder children while having no time for the youngest one, Arabella, who is always seen as a nuisance with no apparent value at all. Ariadne then thinks that she should be there for Arabella, as she has none beside her, so she starts asking about the lute in her hands. When Ariadne questions Arabella if she likes to play or not, Arabella claims that she doesn't know anything about her at all, as she is nothing but the prodigy of the lute, with a big smile on her face. When Ariadne acts surprised after being exposed to such new information, Arabella explains that she is quite the composer, as well as she starts to release the musical talent in front of her. When the maid and Ariadne listen to the originally composed music by Arabella, both of them are quite impressed by her skills, but Arabella starts to act shyly, trying to act humble in front of their praise. Ariadne then remarks that she has quite a talent when it comes to musical instruments, so she should be requesting her parents to buy her a different instrument to play with, while claiming that a pipe organ might be better for her instead. After hearing the advice of Ariadne, Arabella reveals that she is quite interested in a pipe organ, since she wants to arrange the piece to play at Mass, but their mother restricted her, saying that it is quite expensive to buy since she isn't her beloved Isabella. Then Ariadne shits onto her suggestion and suggests that she should be persuading Isabella to ask for one, knowing that the mother would surely approve if the request were coming directly from Isabella. When Ariadne looks at Arabella's face, she realizes that Arabella herself knows for a fact that her parents surely love Isabella more than her, and it makes her think why she would feel pity for a child who has everything that she never had in the first place. Arabella starts acting on her instincts, so she asks out Isabella for a pipe organ, as was suggested by Ariadne previously. But Isabella directly claims that it isn't some toy to amuse herself with, as such extravagance is a sin that reflects poorly on a lady of good standing. Then Arabella starts to act rough to act on her feelings, claiming that she is about to use them for her music, while Ariadne remarks how Isabella's expensive foreign-made makeup and trinkets aren't a matter of extravagance to anyone. But at the same time, Ariadne knows that it is entirely in character for someone like Isabella to be a brazen hypocrite, so she decides to express how beautiful of a music that Arabella could compose on her own to ease out the situation for the little sister. Not only that, but also, Ariadne then asks Arabella if she could play for them, to which Arabella agrees easily and starts playing so gracefully that Isabella ends up being shocked after listening to her music in the end. Isabella seems quite interested in her music, and Arabella thought of creating the hymn to be played at a mass, even though she hadn't finished it. As soon as Isabella ends up finishing the appraisal part, she asks Arabella if they can have a sisterly chat alone, which ends up uprooting Ariadne from her place in the room. When Ariadne leaves the room, she starts talking about being a worthy member of the family while patting her head, insisting that their glory is surely shared between siblings. Soon the whole kingdom of people starts talking about the demer's young lady playing a hymn that she wrote herself for the mass, which makes everyone wonder how talented the sisters are, which makes them quite the combination. But it seems that instead of Arabella being promoted for the music, it is Isabella who is about to steal the spotlight out of her sister's name, claiming herself to be a God-gifted musician. Soon after, Camelia comes in to visit the premise with her partner Ottavio, since she was invited by Isabella herself, since she is a renowned connoisseur of music. Ottavio seems rather excited after seeing Isabella, as he starts to blush after meeting her, which makes Camelia quite jealous of the situation. When the couple leaves in front of her sight, Isabella promises herself that she isn't going to let Ariadne steal the limelight ever again, as she is about to take away all the glory from her, while Arabella continues to seat down inside the crowd, keeping her head down as she is hopeless as always. Back in the past, Arabella was quite amazed to get her new instrument, as she could then start playing as much as possible, as she wanted to rearrange her piece for the mass, but at the same time, she couldn't help but wonder why Isabella would always get whatever she wants and any time she wants, while she has always said that she isn't good enough despite being her soul sister. At that time, Ariadne came up to Arabella, confirming her suspicions that Isabella asked something from her in exchange, as she had managed to get Arabella the instrument that she wanted. It seems that Arabella had to agree to let her announce her hymn under Isabella's name in exchange for having a pipe organ. When Ariadne asks Arabella if she is feeling good after getting what she wanted, it seems that Arabella doesn't know what to say about it, while she fails to understand why Isabella would only help her if she got to play her song in her name. Arabella asks Ariadne to be sure if Isabella is truly wrong or not. Ariadne claims that people don't do the right thing always, which makes her question why that wouldn't work out, since Isabella is her full-blooded sister in the first place. Arabella then starts to react, saying that Isabella might be mean to Ariadne sometimes, but she wouldn't be doing that to her, to which Ariadne decides to question Arabella why she was never allowed to have a pipe organ until Isabella suddenly asked for one. She also questions their parents, asking why they wouldn't be interested in the matter, knowing that Isabella doesn't have any kind of interest in musical instruments. When Arabella ends up hearing Ariadne out, Ariadne claims that staying silent and refusing to make a fuss only going to make the situation more problematic for her, as no one would be able to know that she was wronged by her own sister. But instead of hearing Ariadne out, Arabella lashes out at Ariadne, claiming that she is only blabbering nonsense, as if her sole intention was to insult Isabella. Arabella doesn't just stay within the limits, but she even brings out the fact that Ariadne isn't a true demer, while believing that she is nothing but a fraud, as she continues to tear up. As Ariadne notices Arabella in such a broken state, Ariadne reminisces about being like her once in her life, as she was in denial just like her, as truth only continues to break people in the end. but at the same time, she knows that she cannot be the one to save Arabella and thinks that she had already done what she could do for her. Then in the present time, Isabella is about to begin the ceremony in front of a huge crowd, and they are quite ecstatic to see her perform directly. But soon their face changes, as soon as the music changes into something rather uncanny, which even makes Arabella gasp in fear, as she wasn't expecting something like that to happen. The musician beside her presenting the whole hymn calls an end to the musical and claims that they have to end the recital because of obvious reasons, but at the same time, he hopes that she was able to satisfy her curiosity. He points out that there is some unusual part in the middle of the melody that they are working on, and when he realizes that she decided to make a bold choice by putting an extra emphasis on that part, he asks Isabella to demonstrate that part for the whole crowd. Arabella realizes that Isabella is now in a tough situation as she doesn't know how to read musical sheets on her own, but instead of backing down, Isabella starts to blame it all on the musicians for calling themselves professional as they are having a tough time changing the scales. At that moment, Arabella thinks of having her sisters back, so she calls out in their direction, hoping to calm the situation down, claiming that the version of the score must be missing the string instruments as the change in scale wasn't intentional at all. She then starts to correct the chords, as it would be impossible for someone to play by hand to complete a segment missing from the part. But before Arabella was about to change the wave of situation, people already started to whisper among themselves, even the professional musicians hired in the ceremony. They have already realized what truly happened in the background, as nobody ever spoke about Isabella de Mere having any kind of talent for music in the first place. Even Camellia starts to laugh at the situation, as Isabella was trying to steal her own sister's work to put herself in the spotlight. Then, to recover from the situation, their mother comes in front of the crowd to fix the misunderstanding by saying that the whole thing was composed by the two sisters in collaboration. She insists that Isabella came up with the overall motifs in the musical, while Arabella took care of the details, so it would typically illustrate her as the main composer in this situation. But at that moment, someone inside the crowd starts questioning the woman for claiming something like that, and it seems that the man is none other than Count Cesare himself. People continue to cheer after meeting their eyes with Cesare, and it seems that Cesare is loving it to be under the spotlight at the same time. Cesare then grabs Isabella's hand to kiss it with her wholehearted content while expressing her beauty. But it seems that Cesare had some other intention than only speaking about her fairness. As a rose, he brings up the topic of Isabella having no flavors, as she is trying to grasp someone else's talent while carrying a heavy load of envy in her. Isabella then starts to react in that instant by claiming that there is no way she would ever be envious of someone so beneath her, which makes him feel like he is already successful in his mission, as he didn't even need to mention any kind of name in front of her. He then goes forward with matching her intellect with her looks by mockingly calling it whole as something impressive, and even calls out the crowd of people to comment on her intellect, which makes them start to snicker at the same time. When Isabella tries to confront Cesare about his reaction, he starts to elaborate on how he came in to listen to the hymn, but he had to get entertained by something else altogether. Then, after bidding his farewell, Cesare decides to take his leave with his men, as they continue to snicker and glance at Isabella while they are about to leave, while Lucrezia and her two daughters continue to stand in the middle of the ground. Even the maids looking at Isabella start to make her feel a burning sensation in her, and at the same time, Cesare's companion Ottavio, Isabella's own brother, asks Cesare why he had taken the instance of having such a sharp tongue this dramatic day to lighten up his mood. When Cesare doesn't follow through with his question, Ottavio claims that he thought that Cesare had taken quite a liking toward young Isabella, but even though it is a truth, she has nothing except for having a beautiful face. But Ottavio tries to calm Cesare by claiming that he might be trying to win Isabella back, by acting rough while jabbing Cesare on his hand as if he is trying to act friendlier with him. But Cesare's remark gets the simple guy Ottavio quite in a tough situation, and Cesare claims that he would love to get a drink on the way to lighten up the heady mood. Cesare then decides to ride alone on the horse and suggests Ottavio join him at the salon, which makes Ottavio wonder what kind of tyrant the man must be to act like that. On the other hand, Isabella is having a hard time getting out of her foul condition, knowing that she has no way to get herself in front of the public from now on, as even Count Cesare looked at her with sheer contempt in his eyes. She thinks that people are about to outcast her from high society, and as soon as Lucrezia notices Arabella beside her, she starts yelling at her for not keeping her mouth shut in front of the crowd. When Arabella elaborates, she was only trying to help, and at the same time, she wanted the piece to be played with the right score. She continues to yell at her that it doesn't matter to her since her sister's reputation is now in tatters. Isabella then joins the bandwagon to claim that it is Arabella's fault that the people are now shaming her for no reason while pointing out that it was her song. As soon as Arabella hears the word uttered from Isabella's mouth, Arabella starts to yell at her by correcting that it is her own song since she was the one who wrote it herself, pointing out the fact that Isabella is the one who stole her song in the first place. Arabella then begs her mother to believe the fact that she wrote the song herself, but it seems that Lucrezia is only about hearing Isabella while not caring about whatever happens to her youngest daughter. When Arabella looks up at her mother, she glares at Arabella with anger, claiming that her sister is the crowning jewel of high society and their family's pride and joy. She also repeats that she will not be allowing Arabella or someone other than her to stand in Isabella's way, so she should continue to keep her voice to herself. Lucrezia doesn't just stop there, but she is also ready to beat the senses into her youngest sister for the sake of Isabella, so she continues to beat Arabella until she apologizes to her sister. When the beatdown finally finishes, the maids continue to glance and whisper at the sight of the youngest daughter, while Arabella stops in front of Ariadne as she is ready to embrace her even in her worst state. Arabella then proudly accepts the embrace of the sister who isn't even related to her through blood and starts releasing up all the pent-up tears inside her. As days pass, Ariadne is invited to the salon by Alejandro de Chibot for the art exhibition on the Friday of August, as even Prince Alfonso is about to be present there to check out the exhibition. While Ariadne continues to read through the mail sent to her, Isabella asks her maid, Melita, to check out if there were no other invitations in the mail for her desperately. But the maid answers her in negative kindly. After sensing that there is no other way, Isabella asks Ariadne if she is about to attend Marchioness de Chibot's salon, while implying that it wouldn't be wise for her to join the exhibition since Ariadne didn't have her debut. Yet as she wouldn't be allowed to attend it without a chaperone, which makes Ariadne realize that Isabella isn't wrong for this time. Then when Isabella gets excited about joining the salon on that day, their father makes an announcement saying that it is the right time for Ariadne to have her own debutante ball, which gets everyone, including Isabella and her mother, quite surprised, as they weren't expecting to hear something like that. Isabella remarks that the season has already ended, so it will not be possible to make it happen. But it seems that there is a system for someone to have the debutante ball if they are quite special compared to the others, belonging to the high-ranking members of the aristocracy. Isabella wasn't expecting something to happen, so she ends up slamming on the dinner table, but it seems that the cardinal is quite true to his words, as it seems that he is about to make it happen since Ariadne is representing the Demir household. As soon as Isabella hears the whole thing, she thinks that she somehow has to stop Ariadne from attending the exhibition, as it wouldn't be ready until autumn at the earliest. Isabella even kicks her mother's feet to speak up about it, so Madame Lucrezia starts acting to back up her daughter, claiming that she will soon be needed to have a physician check on her. While the cardinal worries about his wife's situation, Ariadne claims that she doesn't want the mother to have such pain for her for no reason. At that time, Isabella was quite sure that Ariadne would not be able to join the exhibition at all at the salon, but it seems that Ariadne already had some other plans in her grasp. Then on the day of joining the salon for the exhibition, her maid Sancha is quite excited to know that Prince Alfonso will also be present in the crowd to attend the salon. Knowing that, Sancha falls into a great dilemma, wondering if Ariadne should have gone for something a bit more flashier than usual, which makes Ariadne feel rather uncanny, as she is already glad to attend the salon. It seems that Ariadne had asked Madame Romani to attend the salon as her chaperone, and she gladly accepted her proposal with a big smile on her face. It seems that not only meeting Alfonso is her only target, since Ariadne is quite excited to purchase some paintings, as she already knows the future. She thinks of buying good paintings, as they will continue to soar in price if the painters become master painters in the employ of the Holy See, hoping that it would be a great investment for her. But at the same time, she is quite excited to meet Victoria Nike, which is a statue of the ancient goddess of victory that is proudly standing inside the salon, reflecting its sheer beauty and intact preservation, lending its value beyond compare. It seems that the statue was already beyond repair when it was noted in the journal, and the noble who bought the Victorian Nike statue to keep it in front of their courtyard was indeed fake. Knowing that the drama is about to unfold in front of her, she starts to get excited about the fact that she is about to see the most entertaining moment of her life soon. As soon as Ariadne reaches the salon, she gets called into a place which makes everyone inside the place murmur about her as people keep comparing her looks with Madame Lucrezia and Isabella at the same time. But it seems that Ariadne is already used to some situations like that since it didn't change that much from her previous life. When she is about to move away from the crowd, she notices that people have surrounded Prince Alfonso to have the touch of disgrace while he is brightening up the whole place. Instead of caring about the whole thing, Ariadne prepares to leave for the garden until the auction begins, knowing that people will ignore her anyways as she doesn't want Alfonso to see her, thinking that people are always truthful about her looks. But before she is about to move away, Alfonso notices her and calls out to her, despite the fact that he was surrounded by a huge crowd of nobles. After moving away from the crowd, Alfonso meets Ariadne eye to finally greet her face to face after a long time, which brings a big smile to her face as it brightens up her mood in an instant. As soon as both of them meet their eyes, they greet each other in a friendly manner as they are both happy to see each other. Ariadne then comments on how Alfonso had to struggle quite a lot to get out from the crowd, into which he thinks that it was nothing for him as he thinks that Ariadne is a more important matter to him. Alfonso then expresses his exclamation as he never thought that he will be meeting Ariadne in the salon, so he asks her and curious to know who her chaperone really is. When Alfonso thinks that it is probably her mother Madame Lucrezia, Ariadne elaborates that it isn't her mother, but she is being chaperoned by her tutor Madame Romani, which feels excellent to Alfonso that she is having great company with her. It seems that Ariadne is quite happy with her outfit this time, more than the previous one, which makes him remark the topic about the hairpin he had sent to her through a messenger. After remembering about the hairpin, Ariadne claims that she will make sure to wear it the next time as it wasn't matching with her dress this time in the event. But she couldn't manage to say that it is not really in her style to wear something like that, knowing that it will upset him quite so much. While Alfonso continues to talk about heat and skipping the fencing sessions, Ariadne leads him to someplace to look at some flowers, which gets Alfonso mesmerized by her beautiful looks along with the charming flowers blooming on the trees. As both of them enter the garden filled with flowers, Alfonso notices that no one would see them together, as all the shrubs are so tall and overgrown, which will hide them from people's glances altogether. The moment the realization hits him even more strongly, he shuts his own mouth as he started to think about something else, rather romantic, even though he says to himself that they are nothing more than friends to hide his red face. When Alfonso offers Ariadne a flower from one of the trees, Ariadne claims that the lady of the salon wouldn't be so amused about the situation after finding out. Alfonso insists that there are ways to hide the flowers under her skirt as Ariadne worries about throwing the flowers away before leaving the premise. While Ariadne continues to chuckle after hearing Alfonso out, he raises his hand to lift Ariadne so she can pick one of the flowers of her choice, which leaves Ariadne in awe as she wasn't expecting something like that to happen to her. She ends up plucking one of the most blooming flowers, and while Ariadne is focused on looking at the flower, Alfonso continues to glance at her as if she is far more precious than the flower itself. Soon when they wrap up plucking the flowers, the exhibition announcement starts on behalf of the Marquis and Marchioness de Chibaut for their hospitality, while carrying the name of Prince Alfonso de Carlo for his presence in front of the nobles. The man who is announcing the names of nobles introduces himself as Vincencio from the Republic of Porto, which makes Ariadne realize that Victoria Nike was successful at gathering a huge crowd since she had never seen so many nobles in one place. Vincencio then begins the showdown with smaller pieces made by the finest painters, and as soon as the Virgin Mary of Narcissus is announced for the bidding, Ariadne raises her hand, knowing that because of the low popularity of the painter, nobody will be wanting to purchase it except for her. As she already knows that the value of the painter will surely go up in the future, she thinks of having the paintings in her grasp to benefit more in the future. But while she was laughing on her own thinking that none of them will be about to predict her plans, someone beside her starts to bid on the paintings, and it seems that the person who is putting off dirt on her plans is none other than Count Cesare, the supposed villain of her life. When Ariadne glances at Cesare, Cesare glances back at her, while having the same smug look on his face, which indicates that he is trying the best in his ability to provoke her from the beginning, as he is someone who will try his best to grasp onto something that is interested in someone to make them feel worthless. Knowing what she has to do, anyways, Ariadne raises her hand once again to bid on the painting once again to challenge Cesare, and she ends up winning the bid in the end with the amount of 10 ducato. She then contemplates how she now has to pay more price for the painting just because of Cesare, but she ended up meeting her end goal for the day since she will be able to sit back and watch the whole auction unfold in peace. Soon Victoria Nike is presented in front of the crowd, so Ariadne gets prepared to watch the drama unfold as she starts biting on the cookies in front of her in excitement. All the nobles around the whole salon start to talk about the gorgeous statue in front of them as if they have never seen something so mesmerizing as that ever in their whole life, which has a soft shade of pink on its body. Then the anchor announces the starting bid at 1,200 ducato, which makes Ariadne remember who was the person that won the bid in her previous life. But it seems that she can now hardly remember who the person was. As she is deep inside her thoughts, Alfonso calls out to the man claiming that he is about to start the bidding, which makes Ariadne gasp as she didn't expect him to start bidding on the statue. Then at the same time, Count Marcello starts bidding on the statue in the amount of 1,300 ducato, which makes her think that she will be fine as Alfonso isn't about to bid back on the statue, but she was wrong. Alfonso continues to bid on the statue for 1,500 ducato, and it continues for countless times between Alfonso and Marcello, and soon it reaches up to 2,000 on behalf of Alfonso. Ariadne realizes that she needs to do something about it since she cannot let Alfonso win the statue as she continues to whisper to herself. It seems that Cesare ends up listening to her whispers, and he ends up asking her about it. But without listening to any of her words, Count Cesare reveals to the public claiming that Ariadne is saying one would be a fool to purchase such a sculpture, which makes the whole crowd murmur among themselves, and makes Ariadne think that Cesare must have lost all his senses. Then after hearing Cesare utter such a thing with his mouth, Vincenzo starts reacting to it, asking it back to them as he couldn't wonder anyone to make such a claim at any cost. Then to shift the blame again to Ariadne, Cesare points his finger once again at Ariadne, as if it would be better to be asking her the question. But instead of pressing on the matter for Ariadne to handle, Cesare ends up demanding the man about the ingenuity of the statue as if there are countless chances for it to be a counterfeit for some reason. As soon as he finishes his line, the crowd once again starts to murmur, wondering how the famous statue of Victoria Nike can be a counterfeit. Then to recover the situation, Ariadne ends up stating to Cesare that she didn't make any sort of claim like that, but he presses on the matter saying that she is the one who made such a claim, which angers Ariadne even more. Then to defuse the situation at that point, Vincenzo ends up calling out to Ariadne from the crowd as she now has to explain the situation by herself, which makes her wonder what kind of sin she must have done to have such a fate on this day as well. Then Ariadne then starts to cry in front of the whole crowd, acting like a little girl who doesn't know anything about statues and their ingenuity, claiming that all of the nobles are now picking on someone like her, even though she is some silly girl without any kind of serious knowledge about the statue. But it is all inside Ariadne's brain since she couldn't help acting like that, and since she knows that she cannot let Alfonso such garbage which has no value to it, as it can make him lose face in front of the whole kingdom if they hear that Alfonso spent that so much with 2,000 ducato. Ariadne knows that she cannot stand Alfonso being a laughingstock, so she decides to step out of her seat to question Signor Vincenzo, as she knows that he is nothing less than a veteran auctioneer of antique art. She advises the man to take a careful look at the statue to check out the ingenuity himself, as he is more knowledgeable about the statue. But the man instantly claims that the statue surely is genuine, otherwise he would have nothing to do with it with his full confidence. Ariadne then makes the man remember the quote pressed onto the statue, as it has already been damaged, and it seems that he has quite the knowledge about it, and believes that it was then repaired in the end. Vincenzo then explains how the restoration doesn't equate to forgery, as the process was done in the Hellenian era, and at that moment Ariadne asks Cesare to hand him over his club, knowing that he surely carries one with him. Surprised, Cesare decides to hand Ariadne over to his club, while she goes on to prove her claims in front of Vincenzo. She claims that hitting the statue once will prove everything, as the statue will end up breaking down in one strike, but when Ariadne ends up striking the statue, everyone gasps as the carriage that was carrying the statue instantly falls down. But even when the statue drops on the ground, each and every part of the statue stays unbroken, as if it was made brand new once and was never broken ever since. The moment Ariadne declares her opinion, Vincenzo rages and lashes out to her, calling her behavior outrageous and claiming that she has lost her senses, but this time Ariadne doesn't back out from her claims. She starts to interrogate the man with the club in her grasp, questioning him if it is the real Victorian Nike, which makes everyone gossip about the claims, as nothing once broken will be staying intact after striking and falling down. Then at the same time, Cesare comes up to the man asking if he is even the real Vincenzo Delgado, as he has assumed something even more conspicuous in his whole story. It seems that the man has already started running when Cesare ends up making the mischievous claims, while the other nobles continue to run toward him, knowing that he is about to escape from the place, as everyone now knows that he is a fraud. While the guards are up to guard the door to escape, Ariadne strikes glances at Cesare, and at that moment, people continue to talk about how the demure youngness has made such an achievement at the age of 15, once again by revealing the art frauds, as claiming that she is nothing less than the blessing from the gods, since she seems to have the eye of truth. Meanwhile, Ariadne is asking for an explanation from Count Cesare, as she doesn't appreciate being pushed into the limelight with no regard for her reputation. Then Cesare only claims that if the end is well, everything will be well, at the same time proving that he isn't wrong about any of his actions. Ariadne also starts to protest against his familiar tone with her, despite the fact that she doesn't even think of having a conversation with him at all.
And that wraps up another thrilling recap, but the adventure doesn't end here. Subscribe to our channel if you want more twists, turns, and heart-pounding stories. Stay tuned for our next recap.